What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you again. Once again, thanks again for hanging out last night to the few of you who were in here for the NFL video. NFL, it's already off to a start because the stupid London game is already underway and the Jets are not looking good. Sam Darnold, I think, got hurt, but I haven't really been watching it. I don't watch these early London games, man. They just suck. It's bad football usually, which I thought was going to help out the Jets. If it's an ugly game, that seems to be the Jets' style of game, right? But last I checked, Jets were down 10-0. That's not looking good. And no threes came up, so I was on the 2.5 there. So unfortunately, we'll see what happens with Jets plus 2.5. My other plays, you can go watch my NFL video to see the analysis. I got Cincinnati plus 2.5. I don't know if the 3 is going to show up on that one. It looks like it's probably not, but 3 obviously would be better. And then I do have the Giants plus 7. And I will say, because I forgot to mention, the Giants have a couple of injuries there, but they haven't affected the line that much. Malik Neighbors, who is their best wide receiver, even though he's a rookie, he's starting to play really well. He is injured, and I guess Devin Singletary, their running back, is injured, but I'm not really sure how much that matters. That is a spot play, so it's a fade of Seattle in that particular spot. And I think maybe you're getting a little bit of the extra. Maybe the line just went up to 7 just because of those injuries. That may be the case, but I don't think it matters that much. One wide receiver, even if he is the team's best wide receiver, he doesn't impact the line to that much of a degree, maybe half a point in his case, just because he's that good, even though he's still a rookie. And Singletary, he's not a very good running back in my opinion, so, this is a plug-and-play league, man. When it's not, the top running back in the league, Giants, I don't know who their backups are, but they can put somebody in there, and they'll probably be almost as effective at running back, so I'm not that concerned about that. I think it's just a horrible spot for Seattle, so that play remains as well, and hopefully it gets there, as ugly as it looks and as ugly as it's probably going to be, but I just figured I'd throw that one out there. And then at Cincinnati, one thing I forgot to mention last night that's a little addition to the Cincinnati plays, that's also double revenge for the Bengals. The Bengals lost both games to the Baltimore Ravens last year, so I don't know how much that matters when it's a divisional spot. You're always pretty much going to show up. And I think Cincinnati has a little bit of the extra motivation anyway because they've been playing bad to start the season. But maybe a little bit of just an extra bonus there that Cincinnati got season swept by the Ravens in both games during the regular season last year. So I'll throw that out there as well. Cincinnati also, I could mention, they are notorious for starting slow. I think this is the third year in a row that they've started 0-2 on the season. Although this time they started 0-3, but Cincinnati has these bad starts, and then they start turning it on and going on big runs, so maybe it is time for that. So hopefully the Cincinnati play is good. I don't want to lose the Jets, obviously, but I'm not going to win every single bet. Yesterday I went 3-0 with the college football plays, and Miami game, man, I was pissed at the end of that. I won the bet, obviously. Cal, it was like a wire-to-wire cover for Cal. I had it on over here while I was doing the NFL video last night, and I was like, this is easy, man. Cal was winning the game 35-10 at one point in the second half, and then I think it was still 38-18, getting close to the fourth quarter. Cal lost the game outright by 1 point on the very end almost. Miami scored with 20-something seconds left. They converted a 3rd and 20, which I thought was actually a questionable call. Maybe they still would have converted on 4th down anyway. I don't know, man. The receiver stepped out of bounds at one point. I didn't see exactly when he had stepped out of bounds, but then they got a touchdown right after that to take the 1-point lead. I'm like, this is ridiculous, man. The bet cashed, obviously. I put almost the entire bet on the Cal point spread there, but I put 1% on the money line, so I wanted that extra 1%, man, on the money line, and it should have happened. Cal was winning the whole game. It's just ridiculous. Plus, I don't like Miami, so that kind of pissed me off. Cal, I don't know how you blow a 25-point lead in the second half like that at home on College game day, but that is exactly what they did. Miami, they've gotten bailed out basically the last 2 games, man. Lucky to win both of those games. Pisses me off. Maybe they're not quite as good as we think they are. All right, let's move on. We'll talk about baseball here. Let me see here. So, yeah, I just figured I would talk about those few things, throw it out there. And I lost the baseball play yesterday. I thought I was 1-2 on the baseball postseason so far going into that. I was actually 2-2, so now I'm 2-3. It's not exactly what I want, but I am playing on one of the underdogs. And if you look at the market here, you might be able to tell which one it is. Well, maybe not, because both underdogs look like they're getting play here. We only have 2 baseball games today. Both NLDS games are today, and the ALDS is tomorrow. For whatever reason, splitting them up so the AL teams get a rest going into tomorrow. The NL teams do not. Excuse me. The schedule makers screwing the NL, basically. Screw you. You guys used all your relief pitchers yesterday. Well, you're going to have to play again right away here today. So makes it easier for me because I get to focus a little bit more and only talk about 2 games each time. So Mets Philadelphia is the first game up. This is not the game that I'm playing, although I could see maybe some reasons to play the Mets here. But the Mets, of course, won again yesterday. They're on this big run right now. They've won, 3 out of the last 4 games since the playoffs have started. The Mets, this is a misleading result, which is going to lead me to the way that I lean more strongly in this game. This was a really low-scoring game, dude. It was a close game all the way. Philadelphia was winning 1-0. I think Zach Wheeler put together a really nice start again, and then the Mets scored 5 runs in the top of the 8th inning to completely change the game. After it looked like it was going to be this pitching duel, Philly had the upper hand for most of the game, barely, and then that was it, man. Just a late explosion from the Mets. 2 games in a row they've done that, by the way, to ruin my bet on the Brewers, and then yesterday to ruin a 1-hit 7-inning performance from Zach Wheeler. Just crazy, man. Just a total bullpen implosion out of the Philadelphia Phillies. Both teams used 4 relief pitchers yesterday, so the bullpen situation is kind of a wash coming into this game. But the Phillies, as I mentioned going into yesterday, the Phillies did have the worst of the 2 bullpens. So that was something to keep in mind. That is something that came into play in yesterday's game. The Mets used David Peterson, who was in the starting rotation up towards the end of the season there. He is not in their playoff rotation, but they're using him as a relief pitcher, and he's been pretty effective so far in the postseason out of the bullpen, and they used him for 3 innings yesterday to bridge the gap because I thought Senga was going to make a more of a full starters start there. I thought he was going to get a starter's workload, and he did not. So Peterson came in and basically became like the follower after they basically gave Senga an opener, and they both were fairly effective. Even though Senga gave up that 1 run, Peterson bridged the gap to the rest of the bullpen. So a good it basically turned into a bullpen game for the Mets, which I didn't expect, but that is what happened there. So in today's game coming into this, so the bullpen rest scenarios, basically, it's similar for both teams, but I give the Mets the slight bullpen edge just because they use Peterson to kind of save a lot of their better relievers, and their bullpen is better than the Phillies' bullpen anyway. Luis Severino is pitching for the Mets, so this actually lines up fairly decently for the Mets here because he's been their number 1 playoff starters. This is the other thing. I mentioned that in game 1 of these divisional series, you get a situation where you have the teams that came through the wild card tend to have some momentum coming into the divisional series, but their starting pitching rotation doesn't necessarily line up as well as the DS pitching rotation does. So what you saw was all of the teams that didn't play in the wild card yesterday had their ace going. They all put their number 1 reliever out there, and that caught me. Yes, Tanner Bibby. I went against him. I thought he was going to do worse than he did. He still only went 4 innings in the game or something, the 4 2/3 or something, or 4 1/3 for Cleveland yesterday. So, I mean, I wasn't totally incorrect about that, but the Detroit's offense just couldn't get him for anything. I thought they would at least get to him for a little bit. And then Cleveland's bullpen is just really good. And Detroit, they had the bullpen game as we knew they were going to, but Tyler Holton gave up a bunch of runs in the first inning, and he didn't even record an out, and that is just not something that I expected. I think Cleveland scored the most runs in the first inning of a divisional series game. I think they tied the lead in history or something like that. I know it's not a record for, I think, first inning runs in an entire in all of playoff series, because I think the Red Sox might have that record for Game 7 of the 2004 ALCS. I'd have to go back and look. I know the Red Sox scored a ton of runs early in that game, and I don't know if it was the first or second inning where they did that much damage, though. I would have to go look, but man, 5 runs in the first inning for Cleveland. I'm just pissed about losing that bet. I'm not here to talk about Cleveland, though. I'm here to talk about Mets, Phillies. So now we have a situation where, because the Mets went through the wild card series, Philly had their ace, Zach Wheeler, going yesterday, while the Mets had one of their lesser starters going yesterday in Senga, and now it kind of flips to the other direction where now the Mets are at the start of their rotation, even though I don't think the Mets have any real dominant starters here. Luis Severino is their number one starter of their playoff rotation, and he's going to be up against a lesser starter for Philly now, so that kind of gives the Mets a little bit of an edge in the starting pitching department a little bit, but if we look at their numbers against the opposing hitters, Severino, I mean, he had a pretty good season, 3.91 ERA, 1.24 whip. His numbers aren't worthy of like being a team's ace though. So the Mets starting pitching isn't exactly the best, but they have a few starters who are not bad. And Severino had a nice bounce back from the poor seasons that he had leading up into this season. Against the Philadelphia Phillies, he has done pretty well in 64 at-bats. He has a 17-6 strikeout walk ratio against them. Has held them to a 234 batting average and 706 OPS. So Severino has pretty decent numbers, pretty good numbers against the Philadelphia hitters there. So he has not been bad against them. And then on the other side of this, Christopher Sanchez is pitching for the Phillies. I guess they're actually rolling with him as their number 2 starter, which kind of surprises me because unless they have injuries or something, I expected Nola to be in the number 2 starting pitching position for the Phillies, but I don't know. I guess maybe it's a management decision and maybe they're just trying to kind of alternate to try to match up different pitchers against different opposing starting pitchers. I don't really know exactly what they're doing here, but the Phillies have a pretty decent starting rotation coming into this playoff, obviously, with Nola and Suarez, I think, unless somebody's hurt, should both be following up Wheeler and Sanchez here. But Phillies, like I said, their bullpen's not very good. Starting pitching, not bad, though. Sanchez had a good season, 3.32 ERA, 1.24 whip, and then up against the Mets in a 100 at-bat sample size. So the Mets have seen a lot of them. I mean, both of these pitchers are going to be pretty familiar to the opposing hitters. He has a 28-11 strikeout walk ratio, so the walk number is a little bit high. He's held to a 230 batting average and 706 OPS. So his batting average and OPS against the Mets are actually very similar to Severino's against Philly. So both starting pitchers have pretty decent numbers against these opposing hitters. So I don't see as much of an edge there in the starting pitching matchup. I was saying that maybe like the slight edge would go to the Mets. I think the Mets do have the bullpen edge, but I think Philadelphia has the offensive edge, and we didn't really see them be able to do much yesterday, but Philadelphia has the better hitters. So on the side in this one, I think it becomes a little bit of a wash, but the market does look to be indicating to some extent on the Mets side. The line has dropped from minus 155 to minus 138 on Philly. I don't know how much of that is organic market movement, or I don't know how much of it is because maybe Philly decided to change who was starting in this game. I'm not so sure, because if it was Nola and then they decided, no, we're actually going to pitch Sanchez here, I could see that actually dropping the line a little bit, because Nola, I think, gets a little bit more respect in the marketplace and is a little bit better, so maybe that would be some of the reason for it as well. Philadelphia is public, though, and it looks like the line's moving against them somehow. Even though Philadelphia lost yesterday and the Mets have been hot right now, the public still wants Philadelphia. 75% of the tickets. Looks like 79% of the cash on Philadelphia. I don't necessarily agree with the Philadelphia side here. I think the side is hard to pick, but because they're public and the line's moving against them, my slight lean would be to the Mets, and because I think their bullpen situation is a little bit better, and I think even though the hitting is a little bit better on the Philadelphia side, the starting pitching I think is a little bit of a wash. I don't think the starting pitching is a huge edge one way or the other there, but I like the under in this one actually more than I like the side. 7.5, it's gone up actually from 7.5 juice to the over to 8 juice to the over. The over is public with 78% of tickets, 90% of the cash on the over, so it looks like more of the cash than the tickets are on the over, and the lines moved up a little bit on the over. I don't agree with it because of what I just said. Both starting pitchers have pretty good numbers against these opposing hitters. The Mets bullpen is in a pretty decent shape coming into this, to be honest. And Philly, yeah, their bullpen's not very good, but their bullpen also imploded yesterday. So I think that might give us a little bit of an extra edge if you want to play the under here, because yesterday's score was actually a little bit misleading. The fact that it was an 8-run game, 5 runs were scored in the 8th inning, man. Like I said, it was a 1-0 game into the 8th inning. So the final score in that game was misleadingly high, so that might give you a little bit of an edge if you would want to play the under here. I'm not playing it, but I do lean to the under. Zach, what's up, man? Who still plays baseball? They. Baseball is still being played, yes. unfortunately, the game has changed in a way that I don't like. I don't like the pitch count, the pitch clock at all. Like they're doing all these things, which I think are relics of COVID. To be honest, I think they use COVID as an excuse to change the game and not for the better. And they were supposed to get rid of the runner on second in the playoffs rule, the runner on second in extra innings rule, and they still have not gotten rid of it. Maybe, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe the rule doesn't happen in the playoffs, but it does happen in the regular season. It just really irritates me. Where you get a runner on second by default in extra innings now. I just hate it to try to finish the game sooner. But like nobody was complaining about boredom in some of those classic like really long games, or like the Red Sox and Yankees had I think they had like a 14 inning game and maybe something longer than that in that '04 ALCS. Nobody was complaining about that being boring. It was edge of your seat entertainment, man. David Ortiz, Big Papi with the walk-off in the 14-inning game there. I mean, again, nobody was complaining about that. Everybody was on the edge of their seat. Fenway Park was packed for that, man. Fenway Park, kid. Nobody left that stadium, even though it ended at like 2, 3 in the morning or whatever. It was must-see baseball, man. So I don't know. It's just, it's a different world now. I don't like it at all. San Diego, LA is the other game today. Both NL games are today, and I actually have a play on this one. I'm coming in and taking the Padres at plus 122 on the money line. I'm going to fire on it. I think we're actually getting a little bit of value on San Diego here. San Diego blew yesterday's game, man. Unfortunately for them. I liked San Diego yesterday as well. As I mentioned, that was my lean yesterday, and they had a 3-0 lead in the first inning yesterday, and then they blew that lead, and then they were able to retake the lead. They were winning, 5-3, and then they blew that, and then they were losing 6-5, 7-5, and never recovered from that. But San Diego, man, they have a good bullpen, so I think they have the bullpen edge, even though the Dodgers' bullpen isn't bad either. Both bullpens did pretty decently yesterday as well, but I think San Diego used a little bit less of their bullpen than the Dodgers did. 5 relievers there. Both teams actually used 5 relievers, but I give San Diego the slight edge in the bullpen still, just because the rest scenario is kind of a wash. The Dodgers kind of used some of their back end to close out the game yesterday, whereas the Padres they were able to rest some of their best relievers yesterday, and the Dodgers had to use theirs. So I give the bullpen edge in this game a little bit to the Padres side. Yesterday, I was just really surprised that Dylan Cease did not do as well as I expected him to do. Yamamoto, I told you, man, that I didn't trust him coming into this game. His numbers against San Diego just haven't been good this year, and he's a rookie who's being thrown into this playoff start there. So I liked Cease a lot better. Plus, he had more experience. Maybe not in the playoffs, but he had more experience in general. And he just did not do well, man. He just kind of lost it after he had that lead. I was surprised by that, to be honest, because Cease is good, and he had better numbers against the Dodgers. That was part of why I liked San Diego in that one. But now we're looking at a new game here, man, and we're looking at a market that looks to be signaling on the Padres again here. I'm going to do it. LA is down from minus 140 to minus 134. 51% of the tickets are on them, but 57% of the cash on the other side, on the San Diego side. When it comes to playoffs, man, you're not going to be fading like bad pitchers for the most part, because the like worst relievers in each staff are going to be like in the bullpen or just not on the roster at all. So you do have to fade good pitchers, and I'm fading Jack Flaherty, who on the surface he looks like he's the better of the two pitchers, but in this matchup, I think that Darvish actually might be the way to go in this one, and that's what I'm doing. Like I said, again, we see the money line of having moved down on the Dodgers towards the San Diego side. San Diego looks like they have more of the cash than the tickets on this one. I'm going to agree with it on this one. As we can see, as I said, San Diego, I think they have the bullpen edge in this one. I'll give the hitting edge to LA. And yet again, Ohtani was doing things again yesterday with a 3-run home run. So, yeah, I mean, the public's going to come in slightly on the Dodgers because they won yesterday. The Dodgers have the better offense. So I think offense versus, like, the bullpen scenario, I think that kind of negate each other. I give the offensive edge to the Dodgers. I give the bullpen edge to San Diego. But I give them a little bit more of a bullpen edge than they had yesterday because I think they rested some of their key starters, and the Dodgers used some of their key starters yesterday. San Diego, I think they're kind of in a bounce-back mode as well. It's a little bit of maybe the zigzag scenario coming into this game as well. I don't think the zigzag is as prevalent in baseball, but it's something I talk about in basketball, especially all the time, where when a team like wins game one in a playoff scenario, you tend to want to go and look to go to the other side in game two. But usually it's more of a scenario that happens when it's like a blowout, like a really lopsided, misleading result. And that game yesterday was not. I mean, that was just a close game between the Padres and the Dodgers yesterday. So it's not really a zigzag. But I just like how this matchup lines up, man. Yu Darvish, he put together a good season, even though I know he's old. I know he was injured for part of the season. 3.31 ERA, 1.07 whip, not bad. He came back from injury, and he still managed to pitch pretty well. I mean, he still pitched well down the stretch. In September, he didn't allow more than 3 earned runs in any start. He had a 25-7 strikeout walk ratio, 3.55 ERA. So he was still pitching like you would expect. I mean, he is a guy that just, over his career, he's just been a guy who walks too many guys, but he racks up a decent amount of strikeouts. Isn't very hittable. He gave up 20 hits in 25 and a third innings there. So he was in pretty good form as we came down the stretch towards the end of the season there. So that looks good to me. And up against the LA Dodgers, he's done well against them in 244 at-bats. So they have a lot of at-bats against him. So yes, they are familiar with him, but he has 71-24 strikeout walk ratio. I mean, with this huge of a sample size, you start to see those numbers kind of just like even out to what you would expect from him. Yeah, a lot of strikeouts and a lot of walks from Yu Darvish. Nothing new there. But what we can see is he's really not allowed many hits off of them in general. He's held the Dodgers hitters, excuse me, even though they're really familiar with him, he's held them to a 201 batting average and 617 OPS in a giant sample size of 244. And yes, I know a lot of that was back when Darvish was a little bit younger. But I mean, how many of these guys have really even been in the league that long? I mean, some of them have, but some of these guys are newer to the league too. So not all of this is like a long time ago when Darvish was a better pitcher. So he has really good numbers and a huge sample size against the Dodgers hitters. And Darvish also, I went and I found it on Yahoo. He also has a lot of playoff experience. He's made, I think, something like at least 9 playoff starts in his career. So he's the guy that has the more playoff experience over Jack Flaherty as well. Though Flaherty does have some. Darvish is the more experienced of the two pitchers, and he has the more recent playoff experience. If you look at his playoff starts, he didn't do that well like earlier in his career. He had one start with Texas. I could pull it up again. It was on Yahoo, but I can just tell you what it was. He didn't do well with Texas, and then he had, I think, 4 more starts with the Dodgers, I think, in the postseason, and he didn't do well with the Dodgers. So does that worry me a little bit? Because some of those games would have probably been at Dodger Stadium. Maybe a little bit, because that's where he's pitching here. But you look at his most recent playoff appearances with the Padres. He had 4 playoff starts so far. I think all of them in 2022. I guess when San Diego was in the playoffs last. Darvish made 4 starts that year, and his numbers were much better than they were. So the previous 5 playoff starts, he did not do well. He had an ERA that was like, I think, probably above 5. It was really, really bad. But his ERA with the Padres in those 4 starts in 2022 in the playoffs, his ERA was like in the 2s. So he pitched a lot better. So his postseason stats with San Diego have been a lot better. So maybe it helped that he had kind of gotten used to what was going on there. Although granted, maybe some of those were in San Diego, so that would have helped as well. But I just like the fact that he has more playoff experience than Jack Flaherty. And Jack Flaherty's playoff numbers are actually not that good, which I'll talk about in a minute. Flaherty has been good overall, man. Put together a really good season. 3.17 ERA, 1.07 whip. Yeah, he was really good on the season. But he's still on the younger side, and I think he started to kind of maybe get a little bit worse. I mean, his numbers in September weren't bad, but it looked like he was losing a little bit of his command there. He had a 27-12 strikeout walk ratio. Some of these starts, he had too many walks. Still not bad, though. 23 hits allowed in 27 innings pitched, 3.67 ERA. So Darvish, I think, was in a slightly better form than Flaherty was, although not by a whole lot. But one aspect about this that I really like as far as fading Flaherty is, yes, even though Darvish has been seen a lot by the Dodgers hitters, and he did face them this year, I think earlier in the season, though, it was in like May or something like that, was the last time the Dodgers saw Yu Darvish. Jack Flaherty, in his very last start on September 25th, faced San Diego. So San Diego just saw Jack Flaherty, and he didn't do that well in that game. And this was at home as well in L.A. He only went 5 innings. He gave up 3 earned runs, walked 3 guys, 5 strikeouts. So the walks were just too high in that game. So he didn't have a great performance there. So he is vulnerable to San Diego's hitters, I will say. And the fact that San Diego just saw him, as I always talk about, if a pitcher literally just faced these opposing hitters in his very last start, it tends to not be as good an outing the next time out for them because those hitters just faced him. They're used to him. They're adjusted to him. They know what to expect from him. They just saw him. So the hitters tend to have a little bit of an edge the next time they face him if they just saw him. So that's the spot that San Diego's offense is in here. So I actually think that kind of negates the Dodgers' offensive advantages a little bit in this game. I think this gives us a starting pitching edge on the Darvish side because Darvish has better recent playoff numbers. He has more playoff experience, and he has way better numbers against the Dodgers hitters than Flaherty does against the San Diego hitters, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And San Diego just saw Jack Flaherty. Flaherty in 68 at-bats worth against San Diego's hitters has a 19-14 strikeout walk ratio. That's not very good, man. And he's allowed 11 runs against him, 11 RBIs. But that's a ton of walks, dude. So he has not had control that has been as good against San Diego, although granted 8 of those walks are Manny Machado, but he seems to not want to face Manny Machado and just kind of pitches around him. So something to keep in mind here, but overall his numbers are not very good against San Diego. 279 batting average against and 917 OPS. So Darvish has the much better numbers in this specific matchup than Jack Flaherty does. Flaherty just saw San Diego, and Flaherty, he has not pitched in the playoffs, I think, since he pitched in 2023, but I think it was one relief appearance in the playoffs in 2023 for, I forget which team he was on at that point, but I know he pitched, I forget where he was at that point. I have to go back and look as far as, it was on Yahoo. I know it was like a 2-inning appearance where he gave up 1 run, which isn't that great, so it's a 4.5 ERA, and then to go, to find playoff starts that Flaherty has had, you have to go all the way back to, I think 2019 was the last time he made a playoff start, and I think it was with St. Louis, back when he was on St. Louis, and he made, I think, 3 or 4 starts that season. I think it was 3, and he didn't do particularly well. He had, a 4-something ERA, so he was, serviceable, but he wasn't this, dominant pitcher in the playoffs, so take away from that what you will, but Darvish has more experience overall, even though he does actually have the worst overall postseason numbers because a lot of his early postseason numbers are bad, but his recent numbers, his numbers with San Diego are all better, and he has pitched in the playoffs much more recently than Flaherty has. So that's the way I handicap that game. That's a play I'm going to fire on San Diego. We get them at a moneyline underdog price. That's my additional play today, man, on the San Diego Padres, plus 122, excuse me. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks, Zach, for hanging out in this weird time morning video here, weekend morning, baby. And then once again, I said my plays in NFL are the Jets plus 2.5, which you're already too late, but it's going to be a loser, so don't worry about it. Cincinnati plus 2.5 and the Giants plus 7. If you can get Cincinnati plus 3, obviously that's even better, but I don't think it's going to happen, but you can keep an eye on the market there to see if it does. Have a good one, man. Peace out. Let's have a good Sunday. Let's get this done. And I'll be back again, as always, tomorrow for the ALDS matchups. I think it's only going to be that tomorrow. That plus the Monday night game, I guess. But I already talked about Monday night football in my NFL video. So go check that out. Peace out. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow me on Twitter. Follow the Tower Gang podcast. Subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get bonus content, pre-show, post-show, a Telegram with us, and that's going to do it, man. Have a good one. Peace out.